brilliant roofs allow a descending plane, intercepting the free boom of heaven's air. Amidst small inrushes of a mighty breath, or fragrant circuits through gold lattices, and bright dews drip from the immortal sky.
Good morning. We're reading in Book 2, Canto 2, The Kingdom of Subtle Matter. We've come to page 105 at line 83. I'll just review a little bit. Aswapati in Book 1 has gone through the first stages of his yoga. There were several cantos recounting that. Then at the beginning of Book 2, Canto 1, we're introduced to this hierarchy of worlds that he is able to see and witness and experience. And I'll just read the beginning of that passage to give us a sense of Aswapati's status and position where he's at in his yoga. So this is at the beginning of Canto 1, The World's Stair. Sri Aurobindo says, alone he moved, watched by the infinity around him and the unknowable above. All could be seen that shuns the mortal eye. All could be known the mind has never grasped. All could be done no mortal will can dare. A limitless movement filled a limitless peace. In a profound existence beyond earth, parent or kin to our ideas and dreams, where space is a vast experiment of the soul in an immaterial substance linked to ours, in a deep oneness of all things that are, the universe of the unknown arose. So in Canto 1, we were given an overall view of this whole hierarchy of worlds. And then in Canto 2, he proceeds from kind of the lowest of these worlds, and the cantos in succession will take up the various levels of this hierarchy. So now he is in the kingdom of subtle matter, which is the level in this hierarchy of worlds closest to Earth. And here I'll just also read a brief passage from last time on page 103 towards the middle of the page, where he just gives an overview of this world of subtle matter. A world of lovelier forms lies near to ours, where undisguised by earth-deforming sight, all shapes are beautiful and all things true. In that lucent ambience, mystically clear, the eyes were doors to a celestial sense. Hearing was music, and the touch a charm, and the heart drew a deeper breath of power. There dwell earth nature's shining origins, the perfect plans on which she molds her works, the distant outcomes of her travailing force, repose in a framework of established fate. So that gives us a sense of the significance and character of this kingdom of subtle matter. So now we can continue our study on page 105, line 83. And Suresh, would you like to begin? Lydia, ma'am. Thank you. Page 105, line 83. Sri Aurobindo is describing here the descent of spirit into form. The descent of spirit into form. And as it comes down, when it comes all the way down towards Bhati and touches ground, he says. So when it comes all the way down into form and touches the ground of form, daring even to break into the inconscience realm or reign, he says. Inconscience reign means the inconscient has kind of a power over this kingdom. And here, so he's talking about this kingdom of subtle matter. And here, though, it is not yet this physical matter that we have in our world. It's a subtle matter. So, as yet unwrapped in earthly lineaments, not fully encased in the forms of physical matter. But it already has some kind of form. Already it wears outlasting death and birth, convincing the abyss by heavenly form, a covering of its immortality. It means that the forms there don't decay in the same way that the physical forms in our world decay. So they could be immortal there, I guess. But it's a covering for its immortality, he says, and it's alive to the luster of the wearer's rank. So this suggests that it gives expression, kind of a true expression, a living expression to the spirit, to that spirit that it's giving form to, that particular aspect of the spirit it's giving form to. So it's fit to endure the rub of change and time. So it's a subtle, physical, a subtle matter that gives a true expression to the spirit within. And it can give a lasting expression, not like these physical forms here on earth. Yeah, it seems to be not subject to birth and death. Not subject. The spirit is given a truer expression, so it can express its immortality in a way that we can't here. Yes, I think so, and he's going to describe that just in the next passage. He's going to go into it in a little more detail. And you could continue. Oh, that it's already there. Oh. Well, it could be outlasting death and birth in our world also. It could be outlasting birth and death, which is in our world. That's what it seems to be saying to me. Yeah. I think it's something similar to that. Mm. Yeah, it's more ideal in that sense. It's more closer to the idea, I guess, the true idea. Let's continue. He'll explain a little bit more clearly.
A tissue mixed of the soul's radiant light and matter's substance of sign, bird, and force. Imagine veiled in our mind thin air, an abstract phantasm mold of mental make. It feels what earthly bodies cannot feel, and is more real than this grosser flame.
Okay, let's just stop there for a second. So as B was saying, it's a tissue mixed of the soul's light and matter's substance. So that's what that form of subtle matter is composed of. And subtle matter's substance and matter's substance of sign-burdened force, which means that it's expressive. It's a force that's expressive of that soul. It expresses it through signs. And then he's contrasting that subtle matter with our mental images, like you were kind of referring to. Our mental images are kind of made up in a thin air. But this has a stronger substance to it. So he's saying it's not like our imaginations, an abstract phantasm mold of mental make. Because it feels what earthly bodies cannot feel and is more real than this grosser frame. So it has a real substance and an enduring substance, and one that is alive to the soul within it, expressive of the soul within it, not deforming it in the same way that our forms cover over and hide and inadequately express the soul within. Each of our acts that we make, our actions, they express something of who we are. Right? And even our physical form, matter's physical forms, also express something of the level of the soul's development. So a human being expresses a certain level of soul development different than an animal. So these are signs of the soul's development that we see in the form. And Shini, would you continue? Would you continue with the next path?
Refined to the touch of finer environments, it drops old patterned falls of denser stuff, cancels the grip of art's descending pole, and bears the soul from world to higher world, till in the naked ether of the peaks, the spirit's simplicity alone is left, the eternal being's first transparent robe. But when it must come back to its mortal load and the hard ensemble of the art of art's experience, then its return resumes that heavier dress.
Okay, thank you. Let's pause. Here, Sri Aurobindo is describing our passage after death to the higher world, that we're carried upwards towards the spiritual realm in this subtle matter, this subtle body. So he says, after the falling of mortality's cloak, that's after the falling of our physical body at the time of death, lightened is its weight to heighten its ascent. So it loses that physicality of matter, and it's lighter. The spirit within, the soul within, can ascend to the higher realm, refined to the touch of finer environments. It drops old patterned palls of denser stuff. Yeah, these palls are heavy coverings, and actually when you put, sometimes they put a cloth over a coffin. That's a pall. So it kind of carries a little bit of that connotation. It cancels the grip of Earth's descending pull and bears the soul from world to higher world. Right. So she follows in a subtle body. So that's what also happens in trance. the body is kind of put into a state of suspended animation or something. It's just, and then the soul ascends out of it and can go into these other worlds. So this is also what Daswapati is doing. Yeah. Ah. Yeah. So it's not only just at the time of death. Till in the naked ether of the peak, the spirit's simplicity alone is left. The eternal being's first transparent robe. What this is also suggesting is that there are different layers of this body, of this subtle form, that can be dropped one after another until it reaches the eternal being's first transparent robe of the spirit. So there are different subtle bodies. And then when it comes back to earth, then its return resumes that heavier dress, those heavier, more physical forms and bodies. So they can put the body into trance and then move about in this subtle realm, in these subtle kingdoms. See?
Lucent envelope of self-disguise was woven round the secret spirit in things. The subtle realms from those bright sheaths are made. This wonder world with all its radiant boon of vision and inviolate happiness, only for the expression cares and perfect
Form.
form. Fair on the peaks, it has dangerous nether plains. It has dangerous nether plains. In light draws towards the verge of nature's lapses. It lends beauty to the terror of the gulfs and fascinating eyes to perilous gods. Invests with grace the demons and the snake.
Thank you. Let's pause. I'd like to read here Shraddhavan's explanation of this passage. It's quite interesting. So she says, vest here means robe or garment. In the old Indian tradition, earth represents the material principle or matter. Here, Sri Aurobindo seems to be telling us about a time long before matter as we know it came into existence. Physicists and cosmologists tell us that after the Big Bang, which they consider to be the beginning of our universe, it took quite a long time for the atoms, which constitute the matter we know today, to get formed in the heart of the stars. And much longer still for those atoms to coalesce, to form planets orbiting around suns. Forged here means made or manufactured. It is used especially of the extraction and shaping of iron. Here he says that long before the matter that we know was forged or produced by the technique of the atomic void, the empty space full of elementary particles from which material forms have emerged, already the Spirit had created a covering for itself, a loosened envelope of self-disguise was woven round the secret spirit in things. The subtle realms from those bright sheaths are made. The subtle realms, which make up the world's stair that Asopati is just beginning to explore, are made from those bright sheaths, those bright coverings, which constitute the loosened envelope of self-disguise that Spirit has made for itself. And then this wonder world, now he's speaking of the kingdom of subtle matter, with all its radiant boon or shining gift of subtle vision and inviolate happiness, only cares about expression and perfect form. Inviolate means unspoiled. When something is violated, it gets spoiled or broken. But the happiness gifted by that world is inviolate, unspoiled. In a way, the material world, too, cares only about forms. But forms here are not as beautiful as the perfect forms of that world. On its peaks, its higher levels, the forms are beautiful, fair. But also it has dangerous nether planes. Its lower levels are dangerous. Well, he's describing this process of involution in which a kind of a subtle form is woven round the spirit to give expression to it in a kind of a form. And as it descends closer and closer to the inconscient base, those forms that are woven round the spirit become heavier and heavier, more dense, more physical, more unconscious conscious and less expressive of the soul within. And finally, it lapses down into the inconscient, into kind of a complete absence of consciousness, but only kind of an inconscient force. So this is kind of the base then, this inconscient force from which the evolution and our world has emerged out of that dense inconscient base. Yeah, I think she's in the passage itself here. I don't know about quantum physics so much, but in the passage that she's describing just right here, it seems like that the formation of the physical universe kind of expresses or, mimics this process that Sri Aurobindo is describing of the descent of consciousness towards form. So even before the atoms were formed, there was, kind of an energy there. And only very slowly did they coalesce into atoms and then into physical forms. Happening now in what way? We're doing what? So I don't know what you mean exactly. That we're doing it now in the sense, what? That we're giving expression to this energy. Mm. But you seem to be saying that it's not only kind of a historical incident that happened at the beginning of the physical universe, but that constantly there is this interaction of spirit and matter that's taking place even now. Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so all of that may very well be, but I don't think that Sri Aurobindo is saying that in this passage because he is kind of putting it into a historical time frame. Well, he may know. Okay. So, and then just one other point I think to highlight here is that nether is lower under nether planes, lower planes. So that I was going to say that there are these different levels of this subtle matter. And as I kind of mentioned, I think last time too, sometimes Sri Aurobindo is speaking about this whole realm of subtle matter, of not just subtle matter, but I mean, there's one plane of subtle matter, and then there are all the other worlds, the vital worlds, the mental worlds, which also have a kind of a subtle physical form that they use. Yeah, 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 yeah. Mm, mm. As Shradavan explains it here, so in this passage, this wonder world with all its radiant boon of vision and inviolate happiness, only for expression cares and perfect form. Fair on its peaks, it has dangerous nether plains. So even this kingdom of subtle matter has these different levels within it. And and then in those lower levels, it gives form to those perilous gods or the demons. It gives kind of significant forms to them, which are also expressive of those energies. Yeah, here it talks about these forms being expressive of the nature of the spirit within, but also the subtle forms can deceive, be deceptive. If the spirit within is deceptive, then also that they can give a deceptive form to themselves. So these dangerous nether gods may be deceptive, may try to fool people, human beings. And so they take on a kind of a beautiful form. I think we can continue, Luba. Yeah.
Its trance imposes us in conscience. Immortal, it wears for us death's somber robe and authorizes our mortality. This medium serves a greater consciousness, a vessel of its concealed autocracy. It is the subtle ground of matter's worlds. It is the immutable in their mutable forms. In the folds of its creative memory, it guards the deathless type of perishing things. Its lowered potencies found our fallen strength. Its thought invents our reasoned ignorance. Its sense fathers our body's reflexes.
Thank you. Sri Aurobindo is describing that this kingdom of subtle matter and this substance of subtle matter serves the greater consciousness. So it's playing a role in the overall scheme of things. It's a vessel of its concealed autocracy. Yeah, of its absolute rule of the spirit, this greater consciousness. It's where? Mm, yeah. Its trance imposes earth's inconscience. Go, go ahead, Luba. No, I don't. I think he's suggesting, as Luba is saying, that it's trance, but the trance is kind of a state of concentration, but it's also kind of a state of putting to sleep the form. You know? But that trance or that unconsciousness then becomes the base from which matter arises. Mm. Yeah, there are different significances of the term, and it's not clear exactly which one he's emphasizing here, because it can just be kind of a sleep or a lapse into kind of a state of unconsciousness. That is also kind of another meaning of the term, and that's what it seems to be suggesting. Whether it is suggesting a more conscious kind of movement of this energy, it's not clear to me. I'm not sure. Well, so that's kind of one way of thinking it too, right? This consciousness, this higher consciousness, is going into kind of a trance, and it becomes then matter, or it becomes inconscient. invests with grace, with charm and beauty. Just read it so I can read the line. Right at the near the top there. In atomic parcelings of the infinite, near to the dumb beginnings of lost self, he felt the curious small futility of the creation of material things. So it's related in that sense that he's referring to this realm in which the consciousness is lapsing into the inconscient, creating matter. So, yeah, in that sense, it's related to this. Yeah, he's also, I think, suggesting that it's, it has this purpose of the original consciousness within it. It has its role to play, especially in the formation of the earth and of the evolution, giving a ground for all of this. And one of the important roles it plays is to hold within it the creative memory, the deathless type of perishing things. And it also, it's giving, its power is founding our fallen strength. And its thought, its greater thought, invents our reasoned ignorance, and its sense, its subtler, more delicate sense fathers our bodies' reflexes. So it's giving the origins to what we are expressing here and holds those kind of eternal forms within itself. And not only eternal, but true forms within itself. And then so that we can also kind of rise towards those. Yeah, these are all derived powers from that realm. Sudanya, would you like to continue? Our secret breath. Hmm? Okay. Would you like to read? Ma'am?
Inner sight. Its fine suggestions are a covered fount for our iridescent rich imaginings, touching things common with transfiguring hues, till even earth's mud grows rich and warm with the skies, and a glory gleams from the soul's decadence. Its knowledge is our error's starting point. Its beauty dawns our mud mask ugliness. Its artist good begins our evil's tale. A heaven of creative truths above, a cosmos of harmonious dreams between, a chaos of dissolving forms below. It plunges lost in our inconscient pace. Out of its fall, our denser matter came.
Thank you. Again, Sri Aurobindo is describing how it's the origin of things here, of the origins of our force, the origins of our knowledge, the origins of our imaginations, the origins of common things here in the world. Hmm. So as it descends, as the spirit descends through these different levels, it brings all those kinds of, those powers, those higher powers down into the matter. Those forms, that knowledge, that delight, all of those things descend into the matter. And then, as you say, they arise again out. Yeah, it's a symbol almost of that whole involution and evolution. Yeah, right at the center. Mm. Yeah, we also see how all these powers get deformed as they lapse towards matter and into matter also. then those final lines. Again, he's giving kind of this, showing this hierarchy that there are these different levels of this subtle matter. A heaven of creative truth, a cosmos of harmonious dreams between, a chaos of dissolving forms below. So these are all different levels of that kingdom of subtle matter, and then it plunges, lost, in our inconscient base. Finally, it enters into the mud. And out of that fall, out of that mud, our matter is formed. Margaret?
Thus taken was God's plunge into the night. This fallen world became a nurse of souls, inhabited by concealed divinity. A being woke and lived in the meaningless void. A worldwide nescience strove towards life and thought. A consciousness plucked out from mindless sleep. All here is driven by an insentient will. Thus fallen, inconscient, frustrate, dense, inert, sunk into inanimate and torpid throes, earth lay, a drudge of sleep, forced to create by a subconscious yearning memory left from a happiness dead before she was born. An alien wonder on her senseless breast.
Thank you. In this passage, he's shifting now from this world of subtle matter to our world, our physical matter. So he talked about that world lapsing, plunging, lost in our subconscious base. And then from in that inconscient base, this fallen world, that's our world, became a nurse of souls inhabited by concealed divinity. The divinity within is now concealed by that denser physical matter. Nurturing, yeah, it lapsed all the way down into the inconscient matter, and now our physical world has come out of that. That last line, out of its fall, our denser matter came. So now he's describing a being woke and lived the meaningless void. So from that base of inconscience, a being begins to wake up, that concealed divinity within. The worldwide nescience strove towards life and thought. A consciousness plucked out from mindless sleep. So plucking is to pull out, like you pluck the feathers. So out of that mindless sleep of inconscient matter, consciousness has to be pulled. So he gives us some descriptors of this world. Thus fallen, inconscient, frustrate, dense, inert, sunk into inanimate and torpid drowse, earth lay, a drudge of sleep. Forced to create by a subconscient yearning memory, left from a happiness dead before she was born. So that subtle world contains those prototypes, those images and forms and knowledge, which are the beginning of our ignorance. Drudge. You drudge through the mud. It's a heavy, difficult movement. So this world has to now recreate those higher forms, those higher images in that subtle matter world. Anandi? Yeah, the physical breast is still senseless. It's just waking up from a deep sleep. And yet there's some kind of beauty or wonder that it senses.
Different way. It doesn't say anything different going back.
Yeah, we can say it in many ways.
Okay. This mire must harbor the orchid and the rose. From her blind and willing substance must emerge the beauty that belongs to happier spheres. This is the destiny bequeathed to her, as if a slain god left a golden trust to blind force and an imprisoned soul. An immortal god has perishable parts he must reconstitute from fragment lost. The word from a document complete elsewhere, a doubtful title to her divine name, a residue for her soul inheritance, all things she carries in her shapeless dust. Giant energy tied to petty forms in the slow tentative motion of her power, with only frail blunt instruments for use. She has accepted as her natural need and given to man as his stupendous work, a labor to the gods' import.
Thank you. Yes. Handed down to leave in a will at the time of death. You bequeath to your children. Not only that, but that's one of its main meanings. It carries that connotation anyway. It was this destiny was handed down to matter by these higher worlds, by this world of subtle matter with these perfect forms within it, because all of that is immersed in the mire, in the mud. So those ideal forms that were in the kingdom of subtle matter, so that memory is still lurking somewhere. And so our physical world is attempting to reformulate that. But it has to struggle. It's doing it in the darkness. It doesn't really know how or what it's doing. Otherwise, it wouldn't be possible. Unlike the scientific explanation of things, it just happened like this. So here also we get this idea of bequeathing of this as if a slain god left a golden trust to a blind force and an imprisoned soul. So this world has to reconstitute, rebuild all of these beautiful forms that were there in the subtle matter world. Because all things here she carries in her sleepless, in her shapeless dust. So Turia, you could just read those last few lines. A life living heart.
A life living hardly in a field of death, each portion claims of immortality. A brute, half-conscious body serves as means, a mind that must recover a knowledge lost, held in stone grip by the world's inconscience, and wearing still these countless knots of law, a spirit bound stand up as nature's king.
Thank you. It's interesting, huh? The way he puts it here. It's like that, huh? Given to man as his stupendous work, a labor to the gods impossible. Yeah, that's the courageous, adventurous souls that have come here into matter to work this out. Well, of course. Yeah, these are maybe the lower gods, not the highest God. But he describes too how the difficulty of the work, a brute, half-conscious body serves as means, a mind that must recover a knowledge lost, held in stone grip by the world's inconscience, and wearing still these countless knots of law, a spirit bound, stand up as nature's king. Yeah. That spirit is bound within us still, but it has to learn to stand and become king of nature, over the nature. Mm. The countless laws. We get tied up in the laws. Okay, we'll stop there, have a little music.
In the rooms of the young divinity of power, an early play of the eternal shine, the embodiment of his outwinging thoughts, live in a bright, everlasting wonder still, and lulled by whispers of that lucid air, take dream to rest like birds on timeless trees before they dive to float on earth time's sea.
Thanks to Sri Aurobindo.